It's a nice sunny day, and I decided to try a different cheesecake factory, this time in Woodland Hills, California. However, I couldn't resist ordering the same dish, herb-crusted salmon with mashed potatoes, asparagus, and lemon sauce. And it was just as good as the one in Santa Monica. If it isn't broke, why fix it? In fact, it was so good, I think I'll try to make this one at home. I'm sure I can figure out how to cook the fish and make mashed potatoes. I just need to get the ingredients for the lemon sauce. Okay, now that I'm full, let's go feed some of our friends by the lake. Duck is the common name for numerous species of waterfowl, generally smaller and shorter necked than swans and geese, which are members of the same family but not considered ducks. The word duck comes from an Old English word meaning diver, which I presume is from their ability to submerge themselves, which is fun to watch. Ducks generally only have one partner at a time, although the partnership usually only lasts for 1 year. In Celtic culture, duck symbolism is linked to migration and transition. They're a figure of resourcefulness, honesty, and simplicity. Ducks can live both on water and land, and so it's considered a symbol of intuition, flexibility, and high perceptions. Each element has its meaning. The earth is grounded and stable. Water is connected to emotions. So a duck's meaning represents balance. In Scotland, we find the duck symbolism in the coat of arms. And an Irish folktale speaks of a saint by the name of Coleman who passed away. And near his graveyard, there was a well that carried his name. And there used to be a pond there as well, in which a flock of ducks lived. It was said that these birds were under his protection and nobody could harm them. If anyone tried to kill and eat them, they'd either be unsuccessful or even die. I've been told by some of my friends that live on a farm near Staffordshire that ducks can also give egg-laying chickens a run for their money and are a friendly barnyard animal that enjoy living in family groups. Staffordshire is a county in England steeped in legends and well known for being a top destination for family outings because of its beautiful countryside. There are many flowing rivers that run through the county, as well as a thriving brewing industry. The town is still home to a number of great breweries, so it makes sense that there's also many historical and well-loved pubs. Now, as we casually glide over the tranquil countryside, I'd like you to pay attention to the topography. Notice the size of the trees, their spacing from one another, and particularly the architecture in terms of the height of the structures. How many stories are the buildings and homes, as this will become relevant shortly. While I've never been to the UK myself, although I very much would like to visit one day, I imagine that on a clear night one can see many stars, as there doesn't seem to be many street lamps or city lights. Of course, I'm assuming it would be a clear night, and I know England is known for its gloomy weather compared to places like Los Angeles, but if an object were to hover low, below the clouds, for example, near the rooftop of one of these homes, it would be quite visible, especially if it was lit up or giving off its own luminescence. Which brings us to an interesting case that allegedly took place here in 1954 on a relatively clear night in Staffordshire, where a woman named Jessie Rosenberg claimed to have been a witness to an encounter with a UFO. And what makes this case particularly noteworthy is that there was an object hovering in the air, which was very common all over the world in the early 50s, including one famous sighting right over the White House in 1952. But what made this case fascinating was that Jessie claimed the saucer-shaped craft, which she described as appearing like a Mexican hat, was so close that she could visibly, with the naked eye, see the occupants inside looking back at her. I was not that surprised to hear her detailed description of the occupants, as this was the most common description given by contactees following World War II, where off-world visitors were said to resemble Nordic-looking people. So let's listen to Jessie's account in her own words, which was broadcast by the BBC in a 1977 special on unidentified flying objects.
Staffordshire's had a whole crop of flying saucers. Spots in the sky, lights in the sky, strange things. But the strangest of all was seen one day over this cottage. Mr. and Mrs. Holsonback were living there, quietly, out in the country. And, well, you just tell me what you saw.
Well, it was one ordinary day. I was waiting for my husband to come home from work, and my two sons went to Seifert to school, and I was getting changed, and I heard this terrific noise. It was just like a giant cauldron of water being poured onto a fire, a shh sort of noise, you know. And my first reaction was, oh, the children. I thought maybe a plane was crashing or something like that. And I slipped my jumper on and went outside to find my two sons lying flat on the ground in the garden in front of the house, shouting, "Mummy, Mummy, there's a flying saucer." Well, naturally, I just said, "Come on, don't be stupid. Come in the house." But felt sort of a strange sensation. Wended my way up the side of the house to where we had a pump where we used to get all our water from, and automatically looked up to see this, all I can describe, this huge Mexican hat. It was stationary, this thing, and it was bright silver in colour, and it had a dome. It was tilted to sort of, I could see the occupants in it.
You saw people in it?
I saw people in it. There were two people in there. These people were beautiful people. That's the only way I can describe them. They had long golden hair, like a page boy bob, just like the old kings. You used to see photographs of the old kings. And the colour of their hair was golden. Now, I was really...
What were they dressed in?
They had a sort of a polo neck jumper affair, like a ski top suit, in pale blue. Now, these people weren't sat behind, one behind the other. They were sat together, but this, whatever it was tilted so that I could see them and they could see me.
Were you looking at them through windows, through portholes, or what?
No, not portholes. It was just sort of like a cockpit, I suppose, that had this perspex or glass or whatever it was. They could see me anyway, and I could see them. And they had beautiful faces. I shall never forget their faces as long as I live. Their foreheads seemed to be a bit larger than, you know, the bottom of their faces as normal people you would expect to see. But maybe this was just whatever they had round their heads, which was like a transparent fishbowl. And they just looked, and I was absolutely paralytic with fear. I couldn't move, although my mind was ticking over. And they looked so sympathetic that I was just mesmerized for what seemed to be, ages, but it could have only been seconds. And I turned to sort of look down at the boys, was unaware that they were with me because I was so absorbed. And the next thing, I looked up and it was gone.
How low had it been?
It had been, the height, I couldn't tell you. But the house that you've seen, it was just on top of the roof. It was hovering on top of the roof.
How big was it compared with the size of the house?
It swallowed the whole circumference of the roof. I couldn't see. The roof was completely blotted out. The chimneys I couldn't see. All I could see was this massive object that I described as like a Mexican hat without the bubbles.
And then it flew away sideways or upwards?
No, I didn't see. I just looked up and it had gone. But I assume it went straight up, because for a short while after in the sky I looked around and I said to my two boys, "Where can you see anything? Can you see anything?" And they said, "There it is, Mum," and they pointed up, and I watched it. It was just like a little cotton meal in the sky, and it circled us 3 times. It went round 3 times, and then it just shut off, and that was it. When I started to analyse myself afterwards, I feared that I might have had an hallucination, but then I knew I hadn't had, because my sons were so sure about what they'd seen and what I'd seen. And it went through my mind that it was a secret weapon from Russia, and then I thought, well, it can't be that, because if they had something like that, they wouldn't need to fear anybody or anything.
Were you scared by it? Did you run indoors?
Oh, I was petrified. I couldn't move. I couldn't move a muscle. I was paralyzed with fear. But now I wouldn't be. Because now, when I look back, I think, what an amazing thing to have happened, and for me to have seen it.
And when your husband came home, where were you?
Well, when my husband came home from the office, I was locked in the house with my children, under a big kitchen table that we were using.
Under the table?
Under the table, yes. It's funny now when I look back. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but this is the truth. This happened. And that's it. We were ridiculed. It was very embarrassing at the time, and people, they possibly thought, oh, she's a nutter. But, who cares? This is something that happened to me, and I'm a practically minded person, and that's it.
I find it interesting that she would consider the possibility that the craft may have belonged to the Soviet Russians, but quickly discounted that possibility, as with such technology, surely they would have taken over the world by now. That said, the idea that the craft may have belonged to Germans, let alone nationalist Germans, did not even enter her mind. And why would it, as Germany had been thoroughly carpet-bombed into oblivion by the Allies, and were fortunate to not have been nuked as well, as the Allies killed 15 million German civilians and were experts at invading other faraway lands and killing everyone. But only up until 1945, as in 1946 and 1947, when they invaded Antarctica during what is known as Operation High Jump, the Allies suffered a decisive military defeat by what many people 75 years later suspect were a subterranean German colony which never surrendered like the rest of Germany, but instead escaped with their alleged anti-gravitic technology, which historians refer to as Foo Fighters, and retreated to Antarctica, where they established a breakaway civilization which was impervious to the inferior weapons of the official winners of World War II. There's no question that Germany lost World War II, and it's a very different place today, which is still occupied by 50,000 US troops and acts as a vassal state to the Americans, which dictate a new globalist political agenda based on ideology that calls for no borders, no gender, and no race. A demoralized society without any connection to its history, culture, or the actual events before, during, and immediately following the Second World War. That said, Jessie, who's in her 90s now, did not suspect that the UFO phenomena could be connected to the Aryan elite that escaped the Nuremberg trials and instead continue to exist covertly, exercising their technological superiority with impunity in the skies above not only the United States, but the UK. Even today, she does not seem to connect the blonde inhabitants of the craft to the blonde Germanic adversaries her nation faced a few short years before her sighting in 1954.
The illustration.
And the face is slim either side.
A lot slimmer.
Beautiful.
Would that be why the Gavin Gibbons, when he did the illustration, I think it was a UFO News or something, that was a lot thinner in the face?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Sorry about that, Jessie. I hadn't realised.
So we're Dawn's interrupting
That's
with
right.
a cup of tea. Come
When I
on then,
looked back,
Dawn.
the saucer was no longer there, but a few minutes later we saw it circle the house 3 times before it shot upwards like a rocket against the blue of the darkening sky. Quite true.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been speaking on this topic for quite some time now, and have found that to most people it seems like science fiction. Of course, most people also never stop to consider that the genre of science fiction itself is often based on some degree of truth, and in many cases steeped in government propaganda, as Hollywood, like NASA, is to a large degree influenced and restricted by intelligence agencies which prefer to withhold certain technological advancement from the public in the name of national security. The controlled media has been effective in dictating the narrative, as the modern UFO phenomena started during World War II on a national scale with the Battle of Los Angeles in 1942, which I covered in a recent video, and yet people in the early 50s rarely suspected an Earth-based breakaway civilization, as they were more concerned with the possibility of people from other worlds. At least, that's what the media seemed most interested in.
In Washington, ghost-like objects dart across the radar screen at the CAA Traffic Control Center at National Airport for several hours, traveling more than 100 miles an hour. Air Force jet fighters spend several hours chasing the objects plotted on the radar scope.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers. The Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States. In pursuit of this obligation, since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources. However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve. We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any agency of the United States.
Major Keyhole, as author of the book Flying Saucers Are Real, what is your opinion of these new sightings of unidentified objects?
With all due respect to the Air Force, I believe that some of them will prove to be of interplanetary origin. During a 3-year investigation, I found that many pilots have described objects of substance and high speed. One case, pilots reported their plane was buffeted by an object which passed them at 500 miles an hour. Obviously, this was a solid object, and I believe it was from outer space.
As these sightings of disc-shaped craft increased in the years following the Roswell incident of 1947, so did reports of interactions with the occupants of these craft, which oftentimes seem to be
tall, blonde, human-like aliens.
There's the Billy Myers case, where the alleged ET race seemed to be very attractive, and the primary contact being a blonde Nordic-looking woman. Another famous case was George Adamski, whose photos and video of the UFOs shared a striking resemblance to images leaked out of the former Soviet Union of saucer-like craft that were obtained by the Red Army as it invaded Berlin. While the latter models were called Haunebu, the early prototypes were called Vril.
The crafts were named Vril, and Vril in Germanic language means the life force. Basically, craft utilizing the never exhaustible, always automatically replenishable life force. And then in a book on ancient occult, German occult traditions, they had a chart of the runic characters, and this is the runic character for the life force. So it all drives together. The name of the craft, Vril, the meaning of the word Vril, and the pictorial symbol on the bottom all mean the same thing, the life force. So we were able to decipher this little puzzle here. 17 of the Vrils were produced. Quite probably they were tested quietly, low-key testing, and then they were flown to the German South Polar colony. We will talk about it in detail pretty soon. And these are low-level photographs, the first real photographs of such craft in low-level flights over the testing grounds in Germany. It's probably the autumn of 1944. The leaves are gone from the trees. In this photograph, we can see the head of the pilot through the transparent perspex cupola of the craft. A very steep maneuver. Possibly the craft is moving in this direction upward because of all the edges. These and these edges are blurred. This happens usually with the edges, with the attacking and the trailing edge of the craft. What are those lines underneath? Parts of the drive. In this enlarged photograph, we see an even better picture of the pilot inside. These two dark spots here could be the sunglasses that the pilot was wearing. The craft could go 2,900 kilometers in the atmosphere, almost 3 times the speed of sound. It definitely had exoatmospheric and orbital capabilities. And I have a suspicion that these were free energy craft that did not need any fuel to fly. Once they were started and put in motion, I mean their gravity drives were activated, they did not need any more fuel to run. And we can see low-level flights, probably the autumn, early autumn of 44, the leaves are still on the trees. This visible asymmetricity here, if we divide a craft, it looks like the cabin has been blown backward by a strong wind, or it's kind of a cake melting in our refrigerator, just taken out of the fridge. Bigger craft, the Haunebu 2 type craft, which were 25 meter diameter, about 75 meter diameter tank killers, were also produced. They had one big drive, a ball in the middle, which was a tachyon drive, an electromagnetogravitic drive, which they were calling the tachyon drives. The Thule tachyonators. The Thule tachyon drives were produced on assembly lines. They had an assembly line production of tachyon drives in their AEG and Siemens plants in 44 and 45. So in these underground caverns, they had more than enough space and fantasy and guts to build all these incredible flying machines. Armaments were added. These are machine guns in 3 turrets. On this photograph, we see some of the armaments here clearly visible. Something is sticking menacingly from the underside of the craft. A shot from the underside shows the Luftwaffe cross, either the 4 legs or 4 small machine gun turrets, and something that looks very suspicious, something here that we would see very soon resembles like a tank turret with a gun sticking out. These were really the tank killers of the Honeywood-2 type. They were designed to fight whole tank armies. The skeptics would say, well, it's impossible to, what a stupid idea. It's impossible to put a tank turret on a saucer because it would never lift off. A tank turret is about 10-15 tons. It's alone is 2/3 or maybe half the weight of the tank. However, the Germans claimed that these craft were 100 tons in weight, armed with brute steel plates. They did not have developed at the time the force field shields around the craft that they developed later on. That's why they're relying on brute steel armor.
While more and more people are giving serious consideration to the idea that nationalist Germans managed to develop or obtain what effectively can be considered free energy craft, the German scientists themselves seem to imply that they had help from similar looking people from other worlds. That is to say, before the Germans allegedly broke away to Antarctica and South America, assuming that indeed took place, these paperclip scientists seem to imply that prior human civilizations either already broke away to colonize space, or maybe we ourselves are the offspring of a prior colonization, meaning we ourselves did not originate on Earth. Now, as an anthropologist, this theory, as outlandish and outrageous as it sounds to some of you, conveniently answers many puzzles for people like me that spent many years learning about scientific frauds, such as the Piltdown Man or Nebraska Man, two debunked missing links, the first being a fake and the latter being a misidentified pig's tooth. Humanity having a celestial, non-native origin would make it no longer necessary for desperate anthropologists to do all this mental gymnastics to force obsolete paradigms to work, like out of Africa theory, which involves claims that an ape-like foot with a big toe that sticks out to the angle like a thumb, obviously used for grabbing branches, was actually a bipedal hominin ancestor displayed in many museums. Not only do I have a problem with the simian anatomy that some anthropologists try to pass off as bipedal, meaning upright walking, nothing that walked upright like we do had all that fur. Unlike apes and monkeys, we sweat a lot, and there's an explanation for this, which has to do with how bipedal hominins hunted. People cannot outrun most animals, like a gazelle for example, which can reach speeds of up to 60 miles per hour in short bursts, but it cannot sustain that for hours. People, however, can run for long periods of time, and this is demonstrated in marathon runners, where sweating becomes a necessity to be able to cool off after running down animals right before plunging a weapon into its exhausted body. So these upright, bipedal, hairy specimen with hands as feet, allegedly almost human, are paleo art and created to push a political agenda, not a scientific one. All aspects of the out of Africa theory lacks empirical evidence, from how races came to be to the hominin origins coming from tree dwellers. No ancient origin myth or religion attributes our start to monkeys. Many of them in fact claim that apes evolved from us, where the common ancestor took to the trees after some sort of global cataclysm, and instead of the other way around. If this sounds counterintuitive to you, it's now being proposed by members of the scientific community, so it's worth taking. The only apocalyptic document in the New Testament is the Book of Revelation, which occupies a central place in Christian end times prophecy, predicting a golden age or paradise on earth that lasts for 1,000 years or a millennium, following a period of cataclysm or catastrophe. Its influence has been exercised in the development of Christian millennialism, where Christ will reign for 1,000 years, but was also mirrored in National Socialist philosophy, as the stated German vision of a Third Reich was expected to also last for 1,000 years, with both interpretations sharing the same Kabbalistic origins. The book of Revelation begins with John describing the opening of the seven seals and the servants of God, who number 144,000, or 12,000 from each of the tribes of Israel. John explains that there was a war in heaven as Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels, resulting in the dragon cast out of heaven along with 1/3 of the angels, who then worked through the Roman emperor. He then describes a series of prophetic visions, including the whore of Babylon, as well as imagery from the book of Daniel, such as a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, who forces all people to bear the mark of the beast, 666. After the destruction of the beast by the second coming of Christ, the promised kingdom is established, in which Jesus rules for 1,000 years in the New Jerusalem. Central to the expectations of the book of Revelation is the rebuilding of what has been called the Temple of Jerusalem, being the third construction of the original Temple of Solomon. Since the destruction of the first Temple of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in 586 BC, and the second temple by the Romans in 70 AD, religious Jews and certain Christian sects, such as the German Temple Society, which supported the German National Socialist government, expressed their desire to see the building of the third temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Revered by 3 of the world's great faiths, the site's significance stems in part from the foundation stone, which is where Abraham allegedly attempted to sacrifice his son. According to some Islamic scholars, the rock is also where the Prophet Muhammad allegedly ascended to heaven accompanied by the angel Gabriel. The rebuilding of the Temple of Solomon is also at the core of the symbolism of Freemasonry, serving as an allegory for the order's plans, defined as the fulfillment of the prophecies of the book of Revelation, also known as the Great Work, as indicated by Albert Pike, who himself was a 33rd degree Freemason and author of the book Morals and Dogma, in which he claims that the book of Revelation represents the hidden secrets of the ancient Kabbalah. Quote, "The Apocalypse, that sublime Kabbalistic and prophetic summary of all the occult figures, divides its images into 3 septenaries, after each of which there is silence in heaven. There are 7 seals to be opened, that is to say, 7 mysteries to know, and 7 difficulties to overcome, 7 trumpets to sound, and 7 cups to empty. The apocalypse is, to those who receive the 19th degree, the apotheosis of that sublime faith which aspires to God alone and despises all the pomps and works of Lucifer. Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning. Is it he who bears the light? With its splendors, intolerable, blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? Doubt it not, for traditions are full of divine revelations and inspirations, and inspiration is not of one age nor of one creed. Plato and Philo also were inspired. The Apocalypse indeed is a book as obscure as the Zohar. It is written hieroglyphically with numbers and images, and the apostle often appeals to the intelligence of the initiated. Let him who hath knowledge understand. Let him who understands calculate, he often says after an allegory or the mention of a number. St. John, the favorite apostle and the depository of all the secrets of the Savior, therefore did not write to be understood by the multitude. So, why did Albert Pike refer to St. John as the favorite apostle? Because it is the book of Revelation, attributed to John the Evangelist, that serves as the blueprint for the collective great work of all Templar-inspired secret societies. So it is John who is the patron saint of Freemasonry, whose occult, esoteric secrets are unveiled at the 19th degree, where the initiate is impressed upon to labor for the benefit of those who come after him, towards a goal which extends beyond the confines of a single life. The book of Revelation was the last book to be accepted into the New Testament canon, encoded with Gnostic concepts, and in particular the Mithraic mysteries, which were part of the occult knowledge of the ancient Aryan Magi, from where the Kabbalah originates, such as the biblically encoded number 12, as attested to by the 12 sons of Jacob, or the 12 apostles of Christ, which speaks to the 12 houses of the zodiac, which originates with the ancient Mesopotamian astronomer magicians. The creatures of the vision of Ezekiel and the book of Revelation are also paralleled in the lion-headed figure of the Aryan mysteries of Mithras, which held numerous beliefs in common with Neoplatonism, Gnosticism, and Hermeticism, and eventually influenced the formation of Catholic Christianity, which was disseminated by the Roman Empire, whose army was already indoctrinated into the Mithraic mysteries by the fall of the Second Temple. When the Second Temple was sacked in 70 AD, the inner room known as the Holy of Holies was breached, meaning the sacred area that contained the Ark of the Covenant, which was described as having a special lid that covered the top of the ark and was ornamented with two cherubs whose outspread wings overarched the cover and touched one another. According to Kabbalists and sects such as the Swedenborgian and Moravians, the golden sculpture of the male and female cherubs that guarded the ark were entwined in the act of the sacred marriage, or intercourse. When the temple was destroyed, including the area that God allegedly dwelled in, the erotic statuary was paraded through the streets in order to embarrass the Israelites. In other words, God manifests through sexual union and guides those who works with this holy mystery. This indicates a profound relationship with other Aryan traditions, such as Hindu, Buddhist, and Taoist Tantra, as displayed in the sanctuaries of their temples. while the number 12 in Revelation speaks to astrotheology, which did not originate in Babylon, but was inherited by the Aryans from the Pleistocene, as cave paintings made during the Ice Age by Cro-Magnon also reflects the night sky divided into 12 zodiac houses. The number 7 was also passed down to the Aryans from antediluvian times, as the Mithraic mysteries had 7 grades of initiation, which are also reflected in the 7 days of creation, the 7 candlesticks, and the church's 7 sacraments. This also speaks to the 7 celestial gods, which comprise the names of the 7 days of the calendar week, as 7 is the sacred number of the generative force of creation, with the letter G being the 7th letter of the alphabet, which speaks to the 7 chakras or energy centers in the human body.
The central point of the ceremony, the climax of our effort, is the definite admission into the order. The point at which a certain center or chakra is opened, a certain potentiality of power given. All that precedes that in the ceremony is of the nature of preparation for that point. All that follows it is in the nature of explanation of what has been done, or of exhortation as to how the power can be best developed and used.
Emperor Nero was initiated into the 7 mysteries of Mithras, reflected in the 7 sets of symbols on the floor mosaic in the Mithraeum Felicassium in Ostia, Italy. Their sexual rites were performed in caves, and the initiates were sworn to secrecy. Nothing was put in writing, as their esoteric doctrines were conveyed by means of signs and symbols only, which also included secret handshakes. The Mithraic mysteries also had a baptism, symbolizing the candidate's death and rebirth on the spiritual path, with their sins washed away by baptism in water. The Church of Rome produced Christians by exactly the same method. Central to the mystery school was a communal meal or Eucharist, where small round cakes with crosses were consumed during the Mithraic communion. Mithras was said to be born from a rock on December 25th, emerging from a cave after the winter solstice, holding a dagger in one hand to slay the bull, ending the age of Taurus to usher in the age of Aries, and a torch in the other hand to illuminate the world, a light bearer, or Lucifer, mirrored in the Statue of Liberty, which also has a crown of 7 rays. The secret Gnostic rituals of the Mithraic mysteries were reflected in rites performed by the Essenes, of which John the Baptist was allegedly a member of, as he was said to have baptized Jesus, who some scholars maintain was initiated into the sect. Which brings us back to the Templars, who claim to be descended from the 24 elders that fled into Europe around 70 AD when the Second Temple of Jerusalem was sacked. These elders were said to represent 12 men and 12 women, which represent the 12 bloodlines that comprise the 12 houses of Israel, that eventually became the nobility and married into the royal families of Europe, explaining why nations such as Germany and Sweden revere the Lion of Judah symbolism and sponsored the Crusades to retake the Holy Land, temporarily occupying the Temple Mount in search of sacred treasures, which included Kabbalistic scrolls, which became the foundation of European alchemy or internal energetic transmutation, and mystery schools such as the Rosicrucians and, of course, Freemasons. That said, the great work of the Knights Templar, to which German figures such as Johann Wolfgang von Goethe and sects such as the German Temple Society subscribed to, were hijacked and twisted, particularly after 1913 and the World Wars, whose original global goals were replaced from one revolving around an ancient nobility which stemmed from the fabled Atlantis to a Marxist world order, which aims to destroy all prior power structures, including the eradication of race, the confusion of gender, the elimination of any prior ethnically noble culture, and total erasure of individual spirituality and nationalist or ancestral identity, to be replaced by global atheist communism as the new secular world order.
All right, my friends. My name is Bishop Holsonback. This is my YouTube channel, my Facebook group, and I want to welcome you to the program. Allow me to pause for 1 second. All right, excuse me. Thank you so much, my friends. All right. You'll always hear me talking about how Nazi Germany made it past the ice ring. You hear me talk about how Nazi Germany changed the hertz to 432 hertz. Why would the entire world allow Nazi Germany to change the hertz? You know, there's these questions that need to be answered. What is the UN doing with the flat Earth map as its logo? You know, my friends, let's talk a little bit about Nephilim culture. All right. Warren von Von built the first V2 rockets in his 20s. My friends, in his 20s, he built the first V2 rockets. All right. Check this out. Not one V2 rocket was ever sent into into Russia. All of them were I think it was like 1,500 V2 rockets that landed, right? Into England. But not one ever breached Russia. Why? It's something to think about, my friends, and I'm going to answer these questions. All right. First, to start with, what is the UN doing with the flat Earth map as its logo? I'm a flat earther, of course. I get made fun of a lot, Mitch. I want to thank Mitch for commenting in the comment box. Thank you so much, Mitch. See, I can probably pop your comment up, star it right here. See how Mitch and I are able to interact right now? You know, it's pretty cool. And what I'm doing is explaining the flat earth theory tonight, my friends. That's what I'm going to do. All right? Because, my friends, you've been lied to, Mitch. You've been lied to. And lie number one was to hide Yahweh's name. Lie number two was confuse you about the cosmology, the plane you live on. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. My friends, there's a firmament that's set in place. All right. The firmament is above us. All right. The stars, the moon, our firmament. No one is getting past that firmament. All right. Because when you open up your Holy Bible, it states firmament, firmament. But nobody knows what the firmament is. My friends, I'm here to testify. The firmament is to protect us from different realms and different dimensions. Mitch. All right, my friends, let's talk about the firmament. What is the firmament? Like I say, you open up your Holy Bible in Genesis, it'll explain to you what the firmament is. All right? NASA calls it the Van Allen belt. Our Bible says it's the firmament. NASA means to deceive in Hebrew, my friends. And we all been deceived. On Warren von Vaughn's tombstone states, the firmament is Yahweh's handiwork, out of Psalms 19:1. What is a rocket scientist? Why would a rocket scientist put this on his tombstone? I mean, think about it, my friends. He could have put anything on his tombstone, anything. But he puts the firmament is Yahweh's handiwork. He's trying to tell us no one is getting past the firmament. It must have been devastating for Warren von Braun when he was told about the firmament. You know, people want to say that, that we went to the moon and this and that. My friends, no one has been crossed past that firmament. Because when that firmament opens, Yahweh will come with tens of thousands of his holy saints and execute judgment upon all. Nephilim culture, human beings, all will be judged for their actions. And my friends, you can take this to the bank. What I'm giving you is fact information. On Warren von Vaughn's tombstone states out of Psalms 19:1, the firmament is Yahweh's handiwork. The man is trying to tell us something. All right, my friends, let's talk about exposing Nephilim culture. Enochian mysticism, Enochian magic has been around since the beginning of time. If the fallen angels that fell to Mount Hermon taught humans, they surely went to the land of Nod and taught Cain Enochian mysticism. Or Lilith. Somebody had to teach Cain in order for Cain to teach the bad Enoch. Right? It makes sense. Who did the bad Enoch teach? Tubal Cain? Nimrod? See, your Holy Bible says Nimrod was once a mighty warrior. He jumped ship and wanted to become a Gibberim, or he became a Gibberim. My friends, Gibberim, Raphaim, Nephilim, it's all the same thing. All right, my friends. I'd just like to make an announcement real quick while I get my notes together. Gary Wayne will be here October the 19th with Derek Gilbert. Yes, my friends, Derek Gilbert will be on the show October 19th with Gary Wayne. So please mark your calendars because it's going to be live and you're going to be able to ask questions live to Gary and Mr. Gilbert. Mitch just commented, "You are kind. You are kind for answering." Well, bro, check this out, Mitch. Mitch, we all have different views. That's what makes us different. All right, we all have different views, and this is what makes us different. And this is why I'm building this platform, because we all have different views. That is so cool, Mitch. Mitch just commented, I was raised a Jehovah Witness and I learned Yahweh when I was 6 years old. Jehovah Witnesses, they spell it different. I spell it Yahusha. Ashua is Yahusha. And when you're pronouncing a Hebrew word, it's from the right to the left, Mitch. Shua means salvation in Hebrew. And my friends, it's all about our salvation. We've been lied to, and lie number one was to take Yahweh's name out, to remove it. See, they couldn't have the masses praying in Yahweh's name. So in 1611, King James removed Yahweh's name and replaced it with God and Lord. God and Lord is a title, not a name. Our Creator's name is Yahweh, and He wants to be called by His true name. This is not a Jewish thing, my friends, a Jew thing. This is very important because you want to build a conscious contact. You want to build a relationship with Yahweh, right? And how do you do this? It's in prayer and meditation. All right, my friends, let me see who we got tuned in here. Got one. I want to give a shout out to my Facebook group, Seeking Yahweh's Word. I have a Facebook group with over 25,000 members. It's called Seeking Yahweh's Word on Facebook. So please come join us. There's like-minded people there, So please come join us, Mitch. Okay, there's waters above and there's waters below, Mitch. That's right. That's correct. But the firmament is set in place. Like Mitch just said, there's waters below and waters beneath and above, right? But above them water, there is different realms and different dimensions, Mitch. This is why Yahweh set it in place. And Mitch, if you're not a flat earther, what is the UN doing with the flat earth map as its logo? Right? What is the UN doing with the flat earth map as its logo? I got it right out here for you tonight. You can see for yourselves. All right, I just got a comment from Mitch. Amen, brother. Amen. Look up Psalms 19:1, Mitch. It's going to say the firmament is Yahweh's handwork. Psalms 19:1. Warren Von has this put on his tombstone. Why? There's lots of questions that can be asked. My view is the elite do not hide things. They put it right out there for you to see. My friends, it's up to us to seek. It's up to us to comprehend. Like I said, the elite, they do not hide things. All right. I want to give a shout out to Mitch again and thank Mitch for commenting. I want to give a shout out to people that are on my profile page. I want to give a shout out to everybody that's in the YouTube channel. I want to thank y'all guys for tuning in tonight. Nazi Germany gave up their motherland to seek new lands beyond the ice ring. Yes, my friends, there's more lands beyond the ice ring. Behind me here, behind me, the background, I have a pic that's up. See, there's more continents. This is why Nazi Germany gave up their motherland. And you're probably wondering, how did they get this technology? Well, in 1942, the entire world allowed Nazi Germany to change the hertz to 432 hertz. Why would the entire world allow this? My friends, this is how they got in touch with the fallen angels, is through hertz, frequency, and vibration. Nikola Tesla says if you want to understand the keys to heaven, you must understand hertz, frequency, and vibration. The Nazis did this. The Vril did this. All right. Do you really think it's China, Japan putting out this technology? They might build it. They're not putting it out. My friends, we've been lied to, and we don't hang our heads. We put up our heads up high and we proclaim Yahweh's name to the masses. We bear fruit. All right. I want to thank Mitch again for commenting. All right. I know I seem like probably a lunatic up here, preaching all this. But my friends, it's the truth, and you can take it to the bank. All right, my friends, my name is Bishop Holsonback. This is my YouTube channel and my Facebook group, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in tonight. May Yahweh bless you all